The political temperatures in the country are at an all-time high. Anybody coming into this country will be forgiven for thinking that we are heading into an election in a month or two. What with the NASA rallies, so-called barazas, with Raila saying he doesn't recognize President William Ruto and his government, but more seriously has been the continued attack on President Uhuru Kenyatta by the current regime. They have gone at Uhuru Kenyatta in terms of business. They have attacked him in terms of taxes, and the most recent, which appears to be the most brutal, which Caesar would have said, even you, Brutus, was the so-called withdrawal of security from President Uhuru Kenyatta, Mama Ngina Kenyatta, and perhaps a few other people, including Matiang'i, Kibicho, and the rest. We have since been told it is scaling down. But the damage is already done. Now, with all these politics, one is wondering what is happening in the country. Because the originator of most of these things is the Kenya Kwanza government, which is busy lighting fires and then proceeding to put off those fires. Is it a strategy? Are we witnessing strategies, tactics, or is the government rudderless and headless? These happenings in the country lead me into asking one fundamental question, and I'm sure many other Kenyans are already beginning to form that question in their mind. Will William Samoei Ruto, President William Samoei Ruto, get to 2027? In short, will the Kenya Kwanza government last its 5 years? This is not an empty question. I'll come back to it. A subsidiary question: if they were to get to 2027, would they be in a shape to win that election? Or will they be hobbling and wobbling? Would they even be on stretchers? That is the question. Given the manner in which 2022 was fought, it was always obvious to me that whoever between Raila and Ruto won that election, whichever way they won it, they were going to find it extremely difficult to get to 2027. So when we ask whether William Ruto will get to 2027, it's not an empty question. Look at Raila, for example. If he won that election, he was going to meet many, many challenges. The greatest challenge that Raila would meet would be the expectation from many of his followers who for years have endured suffering, pain, that will include losing loved ones, losing property, losing jobs. They would have been expecting Raila Odinga to deliver in a manner that would have been perhaps difficult for him. From a practical point of view, the formation that was Azimio had so many different and competing interests that even forming government alone would have set off the coalition on a very difficult path after being sworn in. In that coalition, there was the interest of Uhuru Kenyatta and Mount Kenya. You had to cater for it if you are Raila Odinga. They would have demanded. Then there was Mother Karua on her own. She was not a flower girl. And then there was Kalonzo Musyoka. That's not all. Raila has his peers, his age mates, How would he have treated those people? The people like Simon Ngeri who had lost elections. Others who had been governors. Would he have been like Mwai Kibaki, who went for young blood and ignored the Matua mines in Nyeri? Ignored seasoned politicians from Meru and wait for Kirai Tumurungi. Ignored senior politicians and went for Martha Karua to form government. These were challenges Raila was going to face. But much more seriously, with Martha Karua around and with hindsight, she could have contributed in a way to the chaos they found themselves in. With Martha Karua as deputy president, in charge of justice, pushing corruption and theft, jailing people, this government was going to be under attack from the oligarchs, from the thieves, from the mafia, from the corruption cartel. So even Raila, if he had won, getting into 2027 would have been difficult because everybody knew him to be a one-term president. And therefore, from the day he would have eaten the Bible, using the Kenyan language, people will have begun going for the president, campaigning on day one. So you can see what I mean. It was going to be a turbulent kind of rule. Now to Ruto. Ruto himself is making matters worse. One, by lighting these fires, going on what appears to be a revenge mission. I'm using the word appear. I know a little English. But in public affairs, I've said repeatedly, perception is king. The perception from a majority of Kenyans, at least a good number of Kenyans, is that President William Ruto is out to revenge. He has identified Uhuru Kenyatta as the object of hate. Because he did that and won the election, he believes by continuing to have Uhuru as the object of hate, to whom he will direct all the sufferings of this country, then the people will forgive him for not delivering. So those are the fires he's lighting and then proceeding to put them off. Secondly, the president himself has given himself unnecessary burden. And we have said it. By forming a cabinet that is not inspiring at all, by putting in place a government of people who cannot convince anybody of their ability, that you'll have to go through the cabinet list and list of his appointees elsewhere. You would have to do it repeatedly and severally, carefully, to be able to come up with one or two persons who at least you can give the benefit of doubt. Where does this leave the president? It leaves the president to be the only man in charge. He's intelligent, he's hardworking, he's skilled, he's shrewd, but the only man around. And I said this long time ago. So how is he going to manage the next 4.5 years when he's the only man around because he doesn't have a helper? To make the matters worse, the president is a member of the Sky team. He seizes every opportunity to leave the country and fly out. The president is like a man on a crusade, every Sunday, traversing the country. The president has made it his business to travel across the country and launch projects. Yet, like we have said, this is a man who is supposed to be in the office. So yes, the president could get to 2027. Assuming the Raila rallies, the push by Azimio to have him out of State House, assuming he outsmarts them, like he has done before, and manages to get to 2027. Will he get to 2027 a strong man? Will he not be limping because the terrible cost of living, the hard economic times occasioned majorly by factors beyond his control, occasioned by factors that are global. The crude oil has been stable for a while. Who knows what's going to happen next in the wilderness that is the crude oil territory. The dollar has gone amok. Today, the exchange rate, even offered by the banks, is much better than the black market exchange rates have ever been. Like every Monday, you expect the shilling to lose by several shillings to the dollar. The price of electricity, despite assurance from the president, is shooting through the roof, affecting not only domestic consumers, but manufacturers. The price of essential commodities, unga, bread, everything. And with the drought, we expect the price of milk to go up. The president could survive this turbulence, but we will end up being carried on a stretcher in 2027. He will be at best limping, wobbling around. Unemployment is not only at its highest ever, but things are set to get worse. With IMF around the corner, there's going to be retrenchment. People are going to lose jobs. Companies are going to cut jobs, scale down salaries. School fees has gone higher from primary schools to universities. For the first time in this country, university places are not being taken because certain students cannot afford fees. I understand help is going down, haven't confirmed. We introduced junior high school and create more cost to an already suffering population. And therefore, from my humble position, I urge the president to stop lighting fires. You get nothing by appearing to be vengeful. Absolutely nothing. Because there are those who believe that even the scaling down of security or withdrawal, as some people put it, is a smoke screen so that when you finally go for Raila, it will be said this is something that is being done across board. That if Uhuru's security has been affected, who is Raila? So I think, therefore, from my humble position, I would urge the president not to go in that direction, not to be seen to be on a revenge mission. He may not be, but that's a perception. Something else, because the president requires the goodwill of the Kenyan public, I urge the president to stop appointing into office people of questionable character, people with question marks hanging all over them, around them. It will need to wait a bit. They may be good people, but in matters of public, like Caesar's wife, top public servants must be beyond reproach. I ask the president to do that. But much more importantly, I urge the president to extend a hand to Raila and sit down. Because what I see happening in this country, if we don't do so, is very serious trouble. Already the president himself may survive up to 2027. But as he survives, I must conclude by saying this: 2027 will be very tricky for him. The only question I want to leave Kenyans with, can you tell me, Kenyans, who will face William Samoei Ruto? Even though he approaches 2027, a very weakened president, seeking re-election. Because weak he will be, weakened he will be. But who is this politician? Who is this individual Kenyans think can face William Samoei Ruto? Will it be a politician? Given that he managed to dribble around and score against them. And with increasing thinking that Raila may not run. Who is this politician that will do what Raila was unable to do and beat William Samoei Ruto? I have heard whispers around the corner that this politician will have to bring qualities to the campaign of 2027 beyond that which a politician will bring. That is the puzzle I leave with you.